Hello everyone, thank you for stopping by and joining us. Today we're going to be doing another entry into our reading journal. We're going to be talking about Feral. And Feral was written by B.K. Evanson and James DeMonico. Hi! And Percy says hi. And it was published in 2017 and it is listed as a fiction, horror, thriller, novel. And this book has some triggering topics into it. So read the content warnings before, or check the content warnings before you read. And the ones that are most prevalent that I can see are violence against women, violence against children, essay not on page but in the story. This book was co-written by writer-director of the Purge movies, James DeMonico, which I did not know when I started reading the book, but it explains a lot on how the book goes. So the book starts off. We start off following Allie, our main character, and she's a typical high school student in like the 2010s. She's not like the other girls and very tomboyish, but still very popular and best friends with the most popular high school cheerleader. And we follow Allie throughout her day. Her friend is dealing with a sex tape scandal, and her little sister is annoying her. Her mom is overbearing, etc., etc. You know, common high school type things, not the sex tape thing. That one threw me for a loop. I thought this book was going to be way different based on how it started. But while she's going through her normal day, unbeknownst to our main character, super close to the high school is a secret lab. And this secret lab is getting up to some Resident Evil shit. At this lab, they're working on a way to make super soldiers by increasing the aggressiveness in their human subjects, while also giving them super speed or increased speed and strength. Because, you know, why not? Super soldiers. So when they were working on this virus, the scientists realized that the virus is making their subjects way more aggressive than their target aggressiveness, and the aggressiveness only affects their male subjects. And not only that, it makes them extremely aggressive towards women. So before they can work on adjusting this and working on the virus more, one of the subjects breaks free. And in typical horror movie fashion, the subject breaks vials of the virus and the virus is out. It is airborne and it just goes. And then there are explosions for some reason because, you know, it's a movie, except it's not. The students hear the explosion from the secret lab that is not too far away, but pretty far, and they hear this and they're just like, wow, that's so weird. And well, Allie is worried about her friend and her current relationship, you know, wondering if she should go all the way in this relationship, but it's kind of like, I'm close to leaving high school, why should I? And that's just kind of the extent of where she's at. And around the middle of the day, Allie's boyfriend is talking with her and he gets unreasonably mad that Allie won't sleep with him. So in his just blind rage, he grabs her throat and starts to choke her. But she starts to yell at him and it gets through to him and kind of snaps him out of whatever he's got going on. And he's confused and she's confused and they're both just like, okay, just trying to be like, what the hell? And he gets really lethargic after this happened, so Allie decides to take him to the school nurse. When they get to the nurse's office, they can see a whole line of guys down the hall coming out of the nurse's office. So Allie tells her boyfriend to get in line, stay right there, and he's just lethargically just like, okay. And she goes to the nurse to see what is going on. And she sees the nurse is really flustered in the office. The nurse is just like, I don't know what to do. And she keeps whispering, this isn't my job. Allie asks what is happening, and the nurse tells her that the boys in the school seem to have a weird illness, and she has called for ambulances to come and help, but they're all tied up at this mysterious explosion that happened nearby. Before Allie leaves her office, the nurse grabs her and pulls her like really close and tells her that Allie should just bail. She should just leave the school right now, and that something isn't right. But Allie rolls her eyes, and she is getting kind of nervous, but she rolls her eyes and walks out. And as she's walking out, she can see some yellow mucus coming out of the ears of the boys that are just in the hallway waiting. She passes her boyfriend, and he doesn't seem to notice her, so she just goes to her next class. And while they're in this class, the students and the teacher, everybody in there, starts to hear some loud bangs on the hallways, and there's breaking glass, and there's screaming. The teacher starts locking the door and barricades it because it's been common training here. And the students are starting to panic, but the teacher is trying to call 911 from the landline. She's trying to call 911 from her cell phone, but there's a busy signal when trying to call 911. And then one of the boys in the classroom starts to growl and does like the zombie transformation that we've seen in movies, similar to 28 Days Later. After he does this transformation, he attacks the teacher. And the door breaks open, and students start to flip tables and start running around. There's chaos everywhere. And while everybody is running around, the boys that have transformed are starting to attack the women in the classroom. They're starting to attack the girls, the teacher, and the women in the school are starting to panic and fight back or escape. And while this is going on, Allie crawls into an empty classroom and looks down the hallway and sees that there's a teacher that is bleeding, and she is crawling down the hallway. It looks like one of her legs is broken. There's like a trail of blood, and Allie is debating on whether she should go help this teacher out. And then she sees that there's two boys following behind this teacher with like makeshift weapons. Like, it looks like they ripped off some of the legs of the table, and they're just following behind her, getting ready to start hitting her while she's on the ground. Allie sees this, and she makes a sound which causes the boys to look over in her direction. And while they look away, the teacher sees Allie there, and the teacher starts yelling and screaming and trying to get their attention while also trying to scream to Allie to run. And the teacher turns around, gets their attention, and they attack her. And while they're attacking her, Allie goes back into the empty classroom and sees that there's a window busted out. And so she jumps through the window and runs towards the parking lot. When she gets to the parking lot, she gets to her car, but she sees a couple of boys in the parking lot area, like sniffing around. So she gets in, she starts her cars. The boys see her, and one of them, both of them start running at her. They break off, so one goes this way, one goes that way, and she's able to turn on her car. One of them that got behind her or to the side of the vehicle, starts picking it up, and the other starts like throwing fists at the windshield, trying to break it and get to Allie. She throws the vehicle in reverse, and doing this, she's able to run over one of them, the one that was lifting the car up, and she just peels off. And she gets away. The boy is following her, but she's surprised about how fast he is. He's following her, but gets distracted and just kind of goes away. So she's in her vehicle. She's freaking out. She doesn't know what to do. All she's thinking is that she needs to go home. She needs to check on her mom, her sister, and she needs to get a phone and call her dad, because her dad is a part of the police force in this town, and he would obviously know what to do. And she gets home. She sees her dad's car there, and she slowly walks up to the door and hears it super quiet. It's very eerily quiet and doesn't look like anybody's home. So she actually walks into the house and goes around. She looks into the kitchen, and she sees her dad beating her mom's head into the floor. And Allie obviously is upset by this. She wants to run, and she doesn't really know what to do. She's just kind of frozen there. And she sees her little sister also in the kitchen, and she's worried that her sister's gone and she's too late. But she does see that her sister is breathing, so she's feeling a little bit better. And she looks over towards her dad, and he has his gun almost out of the holster. So she reaches for it, grabs it, and shoots him, and saves her sister. And there was no saving her mother. And then we time jump to 3 years later. Allie is now like a hardened hunter of the infected, which everyone calls the ferals. The virus apparently affected every male and spread across the country, from what Allie can tell, also the world. Which, okay, so this whole virus just continued going away from the secret lab. The ferals killed the women around the towns, around the areas where anybody was infected, until the women started fighting back. And Allie and her sister joined a camp of survivors so her sister could be around people. And since Allie's like this hardened killer of the ferals, from killing her dad and just trying to survive, she doesn't have time for people or stories or laughter or anything. She just lives only to hunt ferals. And Allie apparently turned into this ingenious trap maker, and she makes these traps to trap ferals and really enjoys it. Like, that's the main goal of her life, which is good because the doctor of the camp that they are now living in is working on a cure for the virus and needs ferals to test on. So Allie is this designated scout, hunter, trapper for this one camp. And since Allie is now fully independent, has no reason for people whatsoever. Like, and it tells us this in the book. Like, she hates everyone. She has no use for people. The only person that she cares about is her little sister. So her way of dealing with her little sister is to take her to this camp and just drop her off there and leave her there while she goes off and does her thing. So because of this, she prefers to be out of the camp, and she thinks everybody at the camp is very weak, and all of the people in general, everybody who has survived these attacks from the ferals, who survived the initial outbreak of the virus, she thinks they are all very weak, and they are all worried about very stupid things, like raising the children that are still around, or trying to be functional human beings, or wanting to have fun when they can, or forming relationships. You know, Allie thinks these are all very stupid things and that they serve no purpose. So she gets back to the camp after she trapped a few ferals and she brought them to the doctor. She sees her little sister, and she keeps telling her little sister that she's stupid for wanting to be a part of the play that is going to be put on by the people who are teaching the children. Like, Allie's little sister's like 8 or 10 and is the oldest of these little girls. So as a part of like teaching them their normal, like reading, writing, like history, stuff like that, as well as survival tactics, the doctor and the leader of this camp decide that they're also going to try and, have them be somewhat normal and as normal as possible. And they're going to do like plays, and they read like fiction books and stuff like that. So Allie's little sister is super excited about it. Allie doesn't care. And she keeps telling, like I said, she keeps telling her sister she needs to learn how to shoot better. She does not need to be in a play. But Allie's sister completely ignores everything she's saying to her and just tells her, hey, I'm excited you're here. You'll be able to see me in my play. And later that night, when the play is actually happening, Allie gets annoyed because there's women around who are drinking. Because, it's like a little party type thing while the play is going on. She gets super annoyed, and she's just like, ugh, I can't be around people. They're so useless. So she leaves the play while it's actively going on and goes out to the perimeter and relieves the guard on duty. She tells the guard, go have some fun. I'll relieve you. It's fine. Go away. So while Allie has been out and about outside of the camp, she's noticed that there's a lot more ferals in the area than normal. She's also seen from a distance this scarred feral that I forget what she called. She called it something, and I totally forgot because it was just, I forgot. So I'm going to call him Big Red because I was listening to Rules of Engagement while I was falling asleep. So that's what we're going to call him, Big Red. Big Red is super scarred. but also larger than the other ferals. And he has, it looks like, an entourage of ferals following him around. And because Allie is the bestest, most quietest hunter to ever hunt, she has also been able to closely trail behind Big Red and to be like, oh, he's super different. There's something up with this feral. And so keep that in mind. And we're back at the guard tower, and Allie notices off in the distance with her night vision goggles that it's Big Red off in the distance. And he looks like he's directing ferals to attack the camp. So Allie freaks out, and she's just like, oh my God, they're gonna attack. And the Big Red being able to coordinate ferals seemed to be very different, because ferals are always viewed as like stupid, unorganized. They're just like stupid animals that are out there. They'll just attack anything that they hear. That's kind of how they're looked at. So Allie sounds the alarm, and everybody scrambles to their defensive positions. There's gunfire everywhere. Everybody's shooting at the ferals. And the attack only lasts for about 5 minutes, and then it stops. And, well, some of the people are like celebrating. They're excited. They're like, woo, we won. Yay, go us. Allie decides that this is the time that she's going to pull the leader of the camp off to the side and say, yo, we need to talk. I need to tell you stuff. She tells the leader about the increasing number of ferals that she's seen around. She tells the leader about this feral that I'm calling Big Red, and that it's getting more and more dangerous out in the wild. And the leader gets a little worried, because increasing ferals are not a good thing for their camp. So she tells Allie that before they do anything, she's going to contact the other camps in the area, via radio, and have them talk to their scouts and try and get an idea of where these ferals are coming from, how many ferals, and just get more information before she makes any decisions. So the next day, Allie leaves the camp as soon as she can. As soon as it's light out, she's gone. And she's decided she's going to track Big Red, because she is upset that... Okay, so she's upset with the leader that the leader's not taking her information for gospel and wants to get more information before anything is done. So she decides to leave. First light, I'm going to track down Big Red. And so she goes to an area where she saw Big Red kind of run off to and sees tracks, so she starts to follow it. And down the road, a few miles from the camp, she sees a few ferals, and she also sees Big Red. And Big Red is growling at the other ferals. One of the other ferals challenges Big Red and goes to attack, and Big Red super easily kills him. So Allie gets closer to them instead of watching from a distance, because she wants to be closer to follow them more closely for reasons. And so they hear her, they smell her, and they kind of see her. So they attack her, and she's able to kill one of the ferals with a machete that she keeps on her. But when she's fighting off this other feral, Big Red comes up behind her and knocks her out. So she wakes up, and she's realizing she's being dragged. And she looks and she sees that Big Red has her legs under one arm and is just dragging her along the road. So she's starting to panic, and she's like, well, what do I do? This is not good, obviously. And so she starts to kick. And Big Red starts growling at her, and she just starts kicking and keeps kicking. And after a while, Big Red is kind of sick of this shit, so he goes to hit her. And he puts her legs down and turns around looking like he's gonna hit her. And then out of nowhere, there's an axe that splits open the head of the feral beside Big Red. And then there's some noises. Allie's still on the ground. She's a little discombobulated, so she doesn't really know what's going on. She hears the sounds of a fight. She hears the ferals, some of them dying. And then she passes out again. When she wakes up, she's being carried, but she's over somebody's shoulder. And then she tries to fight, but she doesn't have it in her anymore. And she just kind of passes back out. And then when she wakes up again, she's on one of the medical beds at the camp. The doctor tells her, like, oh, good, you're awake. And that she was found after there was a gunshot close to the camp. And the guards that were on duty on the perimeter went out to go check to see what the gunshot was, and they found her there. And Allie tells the doctor that she was saved by someone, and she's like, was it someone here from the camp? And the doctor tells, nobody went out besides you. We don't know who you're talking about. So while Ellie's recovering, she is thinking of the woman who saved her. She's like, wow, this woman must be really good at fighting and surviving to take on the ferals and to carry me back like that. That is so amazing. I need to find this person and meet them so they can help me survive better. So when she's recovered, she decides to go to the exact same spot that she was captured at to see if she can find tracks to where that woman was. And she's looking around. She can't find anything, but she does see a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, there's like a scrawled OK on it with a question mark. And then she also sees there's a pencil there, like in this little hole in a tree. So she writes yes and puts it back. The next day, she comes back and the paper says good. And she gets really giddy and excited. One, that she's really surprised she still remembers how to write things down, which is a weird thing, like a weird detail to put in the book, but like she's really excited about that. And on the paper, she decides to beg to meet this person. Like, she wants to meet this person. She wants to meet them in person to say thank you and just kind of meet them. She's hoping that this person will train her to be more like her and better at what Allie does. So she writes that on the piece of paper and she leaves, and then she comes back the next day. When she gets back the next day, she sees on the paper there's a map on the back of it that's a map of the nearby town, and it has a little X and everything on it. So she goes to the town and starts calling out for the person. And as she rounds this one road, she sees that the person is in the middle of the street, and Allie freezes, and that's the point where she's like, this could be a trap. So she pulls out her weapon and points it at the person and is demanding the person, like this person get on their knees, and the person does. So she gets closer and she's just thinking like, wow, yeah, of course this lady could carry me back to camp. She's huge. And then the person looks up and surprise, it's a guy. So she freaks out because it's a guy. She doesn't immediately shoot him, but she starts to try and fight him. And so they're fighting. He's obviously not trying to hurt her. She's trying to hurt him, and they end up like tussling around. He like pushes her off of him, and she backs up against like down the road, and he's like, calm down, everything, I'm like, just relax. And so she's goading him to come closer, telling him like she can't see him, everything. He gets close to this area, and then he gets stuck in a trap that she built, which was also very weird because he was obviously in this town. He didn't notice her setting up a trap because she's just the bestest at it. And once she has him in the trap, she decides, yay, I saved humanity because I found a guy and I'm gonna take him back to camp. So he's in this weird little trap being dragged along by her and this little motorcycle that she has. And she's super excited to bring him back, and he keeps telling her, you know, you can't take me to your camp. And he's like, you have to let me go. But she's like, Trixie Hobbitses, I'm not listening. You're lying to me, obviously, because you will only be safe in a camp. And as he's being dragged, he keeps telling her, like, you can't do this. You need to let me go. And he's like, if you take me to them, they're going to treat me horribly, and I will probably die. And that's when she stops. And she's like, that doesn't even make sense. Nobody would hurt you there. Nobody would treat you badly unless you did something to start it. So he tells her that he was already captured by a camp, and at that camp they kept him locked up and drugged for almost the whole time he was there. And she obviously thinks he's lying, because like, why would any camp do that unless he was aggressive towards them for some reason? So he tells her that she just needs to leave him there, and she needs to go back to her camp and convince the whole camp to pull up and run, because there's way more ferals that are going to come and attack her camp. She tells him, like, that's bullshit. There's no way for you to know that. He says, I can prove it. So she stops and she's deciding on whether to believe him. She's just kind of staring down at him while he's stuck in her trap. And then she's like, he's kind of cute. Which I rolled my eyes, like the biggest roll of my eyes I could have ever rolled. But that's what she was thinking. And he tells her that to show her what he's talking about, she needs to let him out of the trap so he can take her to a different camp to see that it was attacked and to explain what happened there. So she doesn't want to believe him, but now that she's like, he's kind of cute, she does not want to take him back to camp just yet. So she's like, all right, let's go. Show me. So she lets him out of the trap, and she's walking behind him with her weapon trained on him in case he decides to run or anything. He keeps telling her to relax, like he's not going anywhere. But they get to this garage that he has hidden in one of the buildings, and he opens it up, and there's this, not a 4x4, but this type of all-terrain vehicle that he's able to travel in. And he tells her to get in. But because she doesn't believe him, she sits in the back seat and has her gun still pointed at him, just in case he tries something. And she's like, all right, let's go. And this is the time where he tells her, I'm Sam, by the way. And she's like, that's cool. Hi, Sam. So they travel for hours, just all throughout the forest, not really sticking to main roads, but not getting away from them. It's just described as hours down through the woods. So when they're done traveling, they get to, looks like an old abandoned school building, and she sees that there are remnants of the guard towers and fences that were once up, but everything's broken down. Like the school is half burnt. And then she sees this little mini cemetery full of makeshift crosses. And while she's staring at that, Sam walks up beside her and he's like, yeah, it took me all day to bury the bodies. When he says that, she again pulls her gun on him and is like, what did you do? And he's like, obviously, I could not have taken out a whole camp. And then if I did, why would I bury the bodies afterwards? And he was like, he was like, they were like this. It was like this when I got here. And she's like, okay, well, whatever. Who did this? And he tells her that ferals attacked the camp and did this. And she's like, okay, makes sense. I need to get back to my camp. But it's too late now because ferals are very active when it's dark. The sun's going down, so they decide to make their camp in this abandoned school building. And Allie's like super impressed with Sam because he keeps like a whole go bag in this other vehicle. He has a sleeping bag. He has a sleeping bag. And he has a first aid kit and he has food in there. So they make camp in the thing. He gives her a sleeping bag to sleep in. They share food. And while it's dark and they can hear noises in the outside, this is when he tells him that, or he tells her about his backstory. So when Sam found out about the virus and everybody going crazy, he was away at college. And he heard about the virus and what it does to men. So he decided that at that point that he was going to call his family, tell him, hey, I love you. I don't want to hurt you. I hope you're okay. And goes off into the woods by himself. And he just stays in the woods camping out. So he thinks he's going to be transformed into a feral. So he's off sequestered where nobody can get him, and he's there for months. And then he's like, well, it should have happened by now, right? But it didn't. And so after a while, he just kind of wanders back into town and sees all the carnage and the craziness that happened. All the buildings are destroyed, like there's bodies everywhere, all that stuff. So he's like, okay, this is just terrible. So he wanted to go back home, but he was still worried that he could transform into a feral. So what he decides to do is he breaks into a couple of stores, steals some supplies, and just wanders back into the woods to just continue camping out and wander around until he either finds people or turns into a feral. And that's just kind of like what he's gonna do. So in his wanderings out in the middle of the woods, he was captured by a camp of survivors. And he was super excited to find survivors, and they were obviously worried that he was infected and kept him locked up and quarantined. After a couple of weeks, they decided that he wasn't infected and he wasn't turning into a feral, and that for the good of the species, they were going to procreate. He was drugged and chained on the floor, and he can't remember everything because he was drugged, but he said he was put in chains and just chained to the floor and just left there. And he did know that there were people moving around him all the time, so he just saw like bits and flashes of people trying to talk to him, but he couldn't understand what they were saying. And then one night at the camp, there was an attack from the ferals, and the ferals broke through the perimeter and started killing just about everyone. And they overran their defenses like super quickly, and the doctor of that camp decided that, well, she was injured. She decided that she's gonna save Sam because he is the future of humanity. It's been 3 years since any woman in this world saw a man. So their only purpose is to be like, no, we need to save Sam. So this doctor decides to release him from his chains and tells him to run. So he did, and he just left them there and he ran. And then when he just kept running until he was exhausted and kind of passed out. When he woke up and he was sober and just like fully clear-headed, he went back to that camp and he saw the carnage that was left behind. So he decided to do what he did at the camp that he's showing Allie, which is bury the bodies as best as he can. While he was also going through this, he took some supplies that he might need while out in the woods, some weapons, some food, etc. And he also found a map that had nearby camps marked on it, as well as like things of interest in the area. So he decided that he was going to kind of follow where the ferals were moving, and then while following them, check on the camps nearby where the ferals were going. And he noticed that the ferals were moving more northeast to cooler temperatures, and that they seemed to be taking out camps that were in the areas that they were moving. Allie asks why they're going northeast to cooler temperatures, and he tells her that ferals can overheat and die. And so it made sense that they would go to cooler temperatures, because at this point it's like spring, summertime. So to keep cool and to not die, the ferals are migrating. And he pulls out the map that he took from that camp and shows her where he saw like major areas of ferals and which camps that he's been to. And she sees that her camp is a little further up on the map than the last camp he went to, and that they all had little X's on them. And she asks, what did that mean? And he's like, well, those were all camps that were taken out. She sees in the area the camps that Percy, get down. The camps that the leader sent like communications to, trying to figure out like what their scouts were doing, everything like that. All of those camps are gone. Everything was wiped out. And so she's like, oh no, I need to go back to my camp. I need to tell everybody what's happening. And she's like, I'm taking you with me. And he's like, no, you can't take me to your camp. He was like, I've already been locked up and drugged by one camp. I don't want it to happen again. She keeps trying to tell him, like, I promise you that won't happen. My camp would never do that. And he keeps saying, yeah, but they would. So she needs to go back by herself to convince her whole camp that they need to pick up, leave, and head south. So the next morning, he takes her back to the village where she found him at, and she makes her way back to the camp. While she's on her way back, she's trying to articulate how to explain this whole thing to the leadership to where it makes sense and to where they would believe her without having to bring Sam into it. And when she gets back to the camp, everybody's super excited to see her, and they tell her that she's there just in time, that they have visitors. And these visitors are 2 women from a distant camp, and that they're going to have a camp meeting to tell, so the visitors can tell them what they know. And when Allie hears that these women are from a different camp, and she gets really worried, and she's trying to pretend to be super just cool and chill. But because she hasn't been around people for 3 years, she has no way of like regulating her emotions to where people don't see exactly what's going on. So they all go into this common hall area, and these 2 women tell Allie and the whole camp that they were from another camp further off, and that they found a man, and they're like an unaffected man. And the camp gasps. Allie starts shaking a little bit, and they're like, we found him, we captured him, we kept him quarantined for 2 weeks, and he didn't turn, so obviously he was uninfected. And because he was the only way they could save the human race, they decided that they were going to impregnate every willing woman at that camp of childbearing age, be impregnated by him. So what they did was they started drugging him and harvesting stuff from him to impregnate these women. So they said there was about 10 women that were pregnant from him. And after that, they were like, yep, we had 10 women. Their pregnancies were fine. Everything was going good. And then one night they were attacked by ferals. And during this attack, all of the women that were pregnant, as well as all the children in the camp and all the older women who were like in their 50s, like the older women, were killed. And that they're missing about 6 women from the camp, and that they're certain that the man somehow either aided the ferals or just got out in some way and ran away. And they're like, we're pretty sure he killed our doctor. And Allie starts shaking more because she knows that the doctor was injured and let Sam go, because that's what Sam told her. And so she's starting to shake because of the way that these women are portraying Sam. It's just like, that's not fair. And they continue with their story, and they say that they've been tracking this man, and they've noticed that they're getting really close to him because he spent a lot of time in this one area for no apparent reason. They said out of all the areas that he's been to, he's always been just in front of them. They've never been able to catch up, but now they know, because he's been staying here a lot more, that he's in this area. And so Allie starts hyperventilating a little bit, and people are starting to look at her a little bit weird, but they're like, she's just odd. It's fine. So they ask for some trackers or some scouts and some volunteers to go into the nearby towns, the nearby forest, and start tracking down this man so they can recapture him and take him to a different camp. The doctor is like, yes, this is so exciting. The leader is like, I don't see the use for men anyways, but all right, we'll help you out. So they tell these 2 women that Allie will be with them to help them plan, because Allie is the best tracker and scout they have. So the next few hours, Allie is sitting with these two women and with their other team members, volunteers, like a whole group of people, and they're working on setting up search patterns in specific areas to try and find this guy. And she's trying to set them away from the nearby town, but they still set up the whole search perimeter type thing on there. When that's finally done, it's nighttime. She wants to get back to Sam, but it's dark, so she can't. And so she's really upset that they're finding Sam because he stayed there. She's like, it's all for me. He stayed here for me. So she decides that she's like, all right, in the morning I'll leave as soon as dawn happens, I'm gonna leave to Sam and warn him, and he can run so that they don't find him. And she's like, and then I'll come back, slip back into the camp, and it'll be like I was never gone. So she's trying to make this plan in her head when she gets back to her room. And when she gets back to her room, she sees that her little sister's there. And her little sister is like, hey, you are acting so weird. What's going on with you? And Allie is very indignant that her sister knows that she was acting different in any way, shape, or form. And her sister's like, yeah, I'm still your sister. I know when you're acting weird. So Allie decides that she's just gonna yell at her sister, belittle her some more, and that her head is so in the clouds because she wants to be like how things used to be with plays and flowery language. And she's like, and that's not the reality of the situation. Like, you need to be better at surviving or we're all gonna die. So they had this weird argument. Allie decides then, she's like, I'm gonna go take a bath. So she grabs her towel and she goes off to take a bath. And while her sister is still in her room, kind of shocked that Allie was yelling at her and saying these things, she notices that when Allie grabbed her towel, her bag was sitting on it and it knocked over. So she's like, I'm just gonna pick this up and it'll be fine. She'll calm down a little bit and then hopefully she'll be able to talk to me. She sees this bag's knocked over. She goes to pick it up and then she sees that there's a piece of paper towards the bottom of this bag. And she finds this super weird because she's like, Allie doesn't read. Why would she have paper? So she takes it out of there and she looks at it and she sees the scrawled writing on one side, and then she turns it over and she sees a map. So she leaves everything there and just takes the map and then goes to run to where the leader is and takes the paper to her. So while that's going on, Allie's taking a super long bath and she's just like, I just need to calm down. Everything's going to be fine. They don't know where Sam is. I'll be able to go get him in the morning, come back, and everything will be great. And so she's done with her bath. She heads back in her room. She sees that her bag's knocked over and she's like, oh shit. She's like, nobody would be going in my stuff, would they? And she digs through her bag and she notices that the paper is gone. And then she notices that her weapons that were just sprawled on the bed, because she just came back, kind of threw things on her bed, are also gone. And when she turns back towards the door slams shut and she hears it being locked. So that's when she realizes that her little sister told on her. Her little sister found the map and told on her. And there's now a guard outside, and the guard is like hissing through the door, calling Allie a dirty traitor, and that there's teams going off to find her man right now. Allie starts freaking out more, and she's like, oh no, what am I gonna do? I have to get to Sam. But luckily for Sam, Allie also never trusted anybody in the camp, even though she's been living there for like a couple of years now. Never trusted anybody there, so she started, I guess a while back when that became her room, she hid weapons like in the furniture and just around that they wouldn't be able to find. So she grabs those weapons, climbs through a vent on the ground, and then makes this like little roundabout way back to the guard and is able to knock the guard out. And she's like, all right, the guard's out. I'm going to go and warn Sam. And she sneaks out of the camp She just has the weapons that she grabbed. She didn't grab anything else. She just grabs those, knocks out the guard, it takes off out of camp, and is headed towards that town to go find Sam. When she gets to the building that Sam has been hiding in, she sees that there's a light from a candle just burning in the window. Not inconspicuous at all. So she's able to get in through there from this like window that's been broken on the bottom floor, and she knows, she's like, she can hear the sounds of the teams from the camp off, like headed towards more of the front of the building. She scurries in there, she rushes up to the top, and she's like, Sam, we gotta go. And Sam's like, oh, you came back to me. And she's like, no, they know about you. You need to leave. You need to run right now. And he tells her, I can't. He's like, I can't leave you. I'll run if you run with me. But she's like, no, I can't do it because my sister is there. And then that gives the teams in the front enough time to surround the building, call into the building for him to surrender because they don't know Allie's there. And Allie starts to shoot, like around, and just to make some noise. And I don't know if she's trying to scare them off or what, but it turns into this big old gunfight. There's just rounds going off everywhere. Allie and Sam start shooting and throwing things at the teams. They're not trying to hurt them. They're just trying to, I guess, confuse them, slow them down a little bit. But the teams are trying. They see Allie there and they're trying to hurt her. They're like, we don't care if we kill her. And the two women from the other camp are like, aim for the legs. He does not need his legs. So while this is going on, they're trying to defend themselves against that. There's bullets flying all over the place, and all of this noise is attracting ferals. So ferals start to close in on this building that they're having this gunfight in, which causes the teams to turn around and start fighting the ferals instead of trying to capture Allie or Sam. And while the teams are distracted by the ferals, Allie and Sam make their way out of the building and are able to escape. However, while they're escaping, Allie gets shot. She's hit by a stray bullet, and Sam picks her up and he runs off into the woods. And in the morning, he notices that she's shot in the torso somewhere, and it looks really bad. And Allie's getting super pale. She started to shiver. He's like, this is really bad. He's like, if I don't do something, she's gonna die. And the only thing he can think to do to save her life is to take her back to her camp, where they have medical supplies and a doctor. He does. He carries her all the way back to the camp. He gets there, the guards are yelling at him to surrender and everything, and he's yelling at them that she's hurt, she needs medical attention. He's like, I'll surrender, just save her. Just save her. They're like, all right. They start calling the doctor. They have their weapons trained on them. Allie wakes up in time to see that they put her on a stretcher and that he's being tackled to the ground. She starts screaming to let him go, and then she gets drugged and knocked out. When she comes to, she comes to, there's her little sister in the little medical room with her, and she's like, her sister's like, I'm sorry, I did not know that would happen. She's like, I just saw that there was this thing, and I did what I thought was best. Allie doesn't want to talk to her, but she's like, all right, whatever. You did it. You just did it. That's okay. And her little sister tells her that they're having a meeting in the common room. So Allie makes her way towards the common room, hooked up to an IV and everything. And in this meeting, they're trying to discuss what's going to go on next. They're like, the other two women are like, okay, the camps that we were planning on going to according to this map are gone. The leader tells them that there has been no communication from any other camps. Any of their scouts haven't been able to find any of the other scouts. They would have sent Allie if she was there, but she wasn't. But there's no communications from other camps. The leader is telling them that they interrogated Sam, and Allie can see Sam chained up and in handcuffs and chained to a chair. And So they're like, they tell the group what Sam told them about the ferals moving in and everything. And Allie not randomly, she sees him there and she gets upset that he's chained up because he said that's what they would do. So she tries to rush at Sam, who's being guarded by 2 guards, and the leader is there and all of these other women are there. And she tries to attack them, and she's yelling at them to unchain him, to not treat him like an animal, and what's wrong with them. And from their perspective, they see this female who was shot and is in extreme pain and a little drugged up, being a little loopy. So they have to forcibly sit her down, tell her to calm down, and she's starting to get crazy and say like, no, let him go, don't you dare chain him up. So after a while, one of the women pulls out a knife and is holding it to Sam, I think to like one of his fingers, and she tells Allie that if Allie does not sit down and shut up, they're gonna start cutting off pieces of Sam. So Allie does. She finally sits down, she's quiet, and they're going over what to do with this information. They're like, do we leave the camp or do we fortify the camp? And Allie again starts yelling that they need to leave. They need to leave and they need to move south. But Allie's yelling at them to leave the camp. They need to leave the camp, they need to move south, and they need to do that now. But the leader's like, we're going to put this up to a vote. We're opening it up to the floor because it's all of our lives. So what do you guys want to do? And half of the camp is like, we should leave right now. The other half is, no, we need to fortify the camp and stay here. So while they're arguing about this, there's one female that keeps saying that she could drive a boat throughout the whole book. Like, she's just talking about, if I can get to a boat, I could leave this area and just be out on the ocean and just travel along the coast. Like, that's been her whole shtick throughout the whole book. So she pipes up and she's like, well, if I can get to a boat, I can like pilot us away. And they say that there's the only boats that are still usable in the area are at a pier. And this pier just happens to be where the ferals have their lair. So they're like, obviously we can't do that. So they try and make up plans for how to leave. So like, trucks are too noisy and there's not enough fuel for them to go very far. And that would only make them sitting ducks for ferals. Like, we have too many people, too many old and infirm and young people to walk through the woods and to be able to make a safe camp every night. So Allie tells them that getting the boat is the best idea. And they're like, what do you mean? We just told you it was on a pier that can't be attacked. And she's like, well, Sam can get it. Sam can do it. Like, the ferals ignore Sam because he's male. So they ignore him. He can get on the boat and start killing off ferals, create a distraction, and Allie and this girl can get to where the control room, the captain's deck, whatever it's called, start the boat. They can start it and they can meet the rest of the camp. The rest of the camp can jump on the boat and they can just be clear, home free. And that seems to be the only plan that they have, and they're still arguing around on it. They're like, no, we can't do that. We can't trust Sam. He's a guy. We can't trust him. He's gonna obviously run away. And so they decide that they're gonna go through with this plan, and they are threatening Sam that if he doesn't show back up or doesn't listen to what they're gonna do, they're gonna kill Allie. And they tell Allie that if she doesn't calm down and do what's in the best interest of the camp, they're gonna kill Sam. So they make these threats to both of them in front of them at the same meeting, and then they start to make their plan to get to the boat. They're like, okay, we're gonna make this plan to get to the boat. They take Sam to a cell that they have and they chain him to the floor. When they are done doing that, the the ferals start attacking the outside of the camp again. And the ferals are being directed by Big Red, and so they're more efficient in their previous attacks. And Allie realizes that the previous attacks that they've been doing were testing the defenses of the camp. And because they were doing that, the ferals are easily able to get over and under and through the fence to get to the people. And they start killing some of the women, and they start knocking out and dragging other women away. And while the beginning of the attack is happening on the outside of the camp, on the inside of the camp, the little girls, they go to Sam's cell and they start staring at him because they don't believe he's real, because they're curious children. Sam sits there and he's like, "Oh, you must be Allie's sister." And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I've heard about you." And she's like, "I haven't heard anything about you." And that's the interaction they're having when the alarms go off. The alarms go off, Sam stiffens, the little girls start to kind of freak out, and they're like, "Oh, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do?" And Sam tells them, he's like, "Do you guys have feral blood?" She's like, "Yeah, we have some in this storage room." And he's like, "Cover yourselves, all of you, in feral blood and go hide." He's like, "Hide as in the smallest place you can hide, cover yourself, and just go and hide, cover your ears." So they go off, and that's what they're gonna do. And Sam is trying to free himself, but he's chained to a floor. And Allie is on the outside trying to get to a weapon to try and fight off the ferals. And she's trying to fight off the ferals to get to Sam, because they're in the camp now. So she's killing as many ferals as she can. The doctor gets sliced through the abdomen area, and as she's dying, she unlocks Sam, just like the previous doctor at the previous camp, lets him go and tells him he needs to live. He needs to just take Allie and leave. And so he's free. He's trying to get to a weapon so he can go find Allie and save her. And Allie is attacked. Sam sees her from a distance and then jumps into the fight, and there's just all of this chaos. He saves her, and they both start killing some ferals, and then the ferals leave. Allie and Sam realize that most of 15 women were also gone. They're just gone. And then there's a bunch of dead bodies around, and there's one of the survivors is the leader's partner. I can't remember her name either, but she's there, and she's like, "They're kidnapped. What do we do?" So Allie tells them that we're going to go off with our plan still, except we're going to add the little thing in there that we need to save them from the boat, because that's obviously where they're taking them. So while Sam's going through, he's going to create a distraction, try and save them, while me and this girl go and start the boat. And we're gonna split up. Half the team goes with me, half the team stays here with you. You're gonna sit here and you're gonna get the girls and everybody who's left and get them in the trucks and get on this bridge. We get to the bridge, we're gonna use the winches on the trucks and lower you down to the boat. And so all right, good plan. So that's what they decide to do. When they get to the pier, Sam covers himself in feral blood and is carrying this giant duffel bag behind him, and he just starts walking onto the boat. It's covered in ferals. There's just ferals walking around everywhere. So he just kind of casually walks up, but because he doesn't smell like a woman, they just leave him alone. They just ignore him completely until he gets into the lower parts of the boat. And I say boat, but it's like a cruise ship. And he gets to the lower levels. He's trying to find where these women are. And as he's getting closer to the lower levels of the boat, the ship, ferals are starting to growl at him. They're starting to notice him more. He does have Allie's machete, and he does start killing one or two of them at a time. And as he's making his way down into the boat. And while he's doing that, Allie is waiting for the ferals to kind of clear off the top of the boat so that her and this girl can start making their way onto it. And so Sam's down there. He has night vision goggles on. He's just going through killing one feral here and one feral there. And he gets to this large room. When he gets to this room, he hears people in it, and he looks around with his night vision goggles, and he sees that there's a bunch of women there, and there's some of them that are crying, some of them are dead, some of them are just staring off into space, and he notices that they're not the women from Allie's camp. So he gets close to one of them, and he's trying to talk to her. She freaks out because she can't see anything. They're in pitch black, so she doesn't know. Sorry about that. Amazon delivery. My husband was super nice to get me a physical copy of The Book Eaters, and it just showed up. So that caused all the animals to go crazy. But yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to read that one again. But anyways, where were we? Oh, yes. Sam finds the women in this large little area. It's pitch dark. They can't see anything. He can see them because of the night vision goggles. And he goes up to one of them, tries to talk to her. She freaks out. He's like, shh, calm down. I'm here. I'm not one of them. It's fine. So she starts grabbing at him, and he's like, hang on. He opens up, hit the bag, and pulls out a flashlight, turns it on so she can see that he's a regular person. And when she realizes this, she starts grabbing at him, and she's begging him to kill her. She's like, just kill me. And he's like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm here to save you. And she's just like, kill me. And then he looks around with the flashlight and notices that a lot of these women are in various stages of pregnancy. And he tells them, he's like, I'm here to save you. I'm not going to kill you. And then some of them start getting hysterical that he won't kill them. He has the one female in front of him, and he starts shaking her. And when after she's calmed down a little bit from being shook, he gets a pistol, tosses it in the middle, and he's like, if you guys want to be saved and you want to get out of here, he's like, there's a gun. We're about to just start some shit here. He was like, or you guys can kill yourselves. I don't know. I need to find others to try and save them. And he does this whole we need to fight back speech type thing. And that first woman grabs the gun, and she's trying to rally the women. And he gives her the flashlight, and he goes off to try and find the women from Allie's camp. And Allie and her team notice that there's a large roar from Big Red that's somewhere more in the ship, because the ferals that are on top of the ship start moving off towards into the ship. So that's when her and her team start to get out and make their way to the control room to start to get the boat started. And Sam goes into another large room after he's still going through killing ferals. He gets to another large room, and he sees Big Red stalking around the group of women that are from Allie's camp. And he has the night vision goggles. The women are obviously very scared. They have no idea what's going on. All they hear are ferals around them, so they're circled and clustered in the middle. And Big Red is stalking at them, and then he's also reaching out as he's stalking to kind of stab at them and mess with them a little bit, and it's making them more scared. The leader of the camp is separated from the rest of the women by Big Red, and she's trying to fight back. She's throwing punches. She's trying to listen for where he's at, so she can kick him, she can punch him, she can try and fight back in any way that she can. And he's just messing with her. He's super fast and everything, so he's just messing with her. And then after a while, he starts ripping her clothes with his claws, and he has her to where he's pushing her on the ground as he's ripping out the clothes. And that's where Sam yells duck. And as soon as he yells at all the women, they duck. He pulls out a machine gun out of the duffel bag that he has and just starts firing, starts mowing down ferals. Big Red roars at him but takes off, and they're shooting everything. He's throwing out flashlights and throws the bag at the women, and he's like, there's guns, you need to fight. And so they start pulling out weapons, they start firing and everything. They pull out flashlights and all of those type of things. And then as soon as Allie and her team hear gunshots, that's when they rush into there. And Allie's protecting this woman as she's trying to get the boat started. So she's starting to fight the ferals that are coming back up on top of the ship, and while the other team is at the bottom. So it's a huge gunshots everywhere. Ferals are everywhere. Everything is like dying. She sees the team from the women that were not from her camp, but I guess from previous camps, also coming out onto the deck with makeshift weapons. And one of them has a gun, and they're trying to get all of their weapons, everything. They're just fighting back from the ferals. We go back to the other team, which got in these really loud, noisy trucks, and they started making their way to the bridge. They make a wall kind of with a couple of vehicles, and they put other 2 vehicles pushed right up against the edge, so they have their winches ready to pull down. They're getting everything ready. There's turrets on the vehicles, and they're like, all right, we just have to wait for the boat to show up. But because the noise attracted the ferals are starting to come up on the bridge. And because they're coming up on the bridge and they're slowly advancing, the women, they jump in the turrets and they have their ARs, and they're like, all right, we're just going to wait for them to get into range, and we're just going to start firing while we wait for the boat. And then we switch back to the boat. Allie's not her friend, the woman that's with Allie, gets the boat started. So she starts up the boat, and she's pulling away from the pier while their other team is clearing out the rest of the ship. They're firing. Allie sees Big Red on the shore. He's roaring at her while he takes up a team of, or not a team, like a mini army of ferals, and runs back towards the camp. And she's like, oh no, my sister. And so she keeps telling that girl, she's like, you need to hurry up when you get back to that bridge really quick, when you get back there super fast. And she's like, I'm going as fast as I can. And we go back to the bridge, and the ferals are within range, so everybody's firing weapons at them. And because they're on a bridge, there's ferals coming from both sides of the bridge. They're firing from two places. They're running out of ammo. They're starting to get super hopeless. And before they're like, we're all gonna die, they hear the boat coming up towards the bridge. And then once it starts getting closer, 2 of them start manning the winches and getting the winches ready for, there could be 2 people attached to them, so it's like 4 people every trip. And Allie's little sister, throughout this whole standoff on the bridge, just took command of everybody. She was just like, no, this is what we're doing. So she's like, all right, we're gonna get the younger girls on the winches first. They go first, and then we're just gonna keep going like that. They got them on the winches. As soon as they're ready, the people are ready. They're like, all right, now they start getting lowered down on the winch. And then they lowered from the bridge on the winch down onto the boat. And on the boat, they're like untied from the winch, and it's going to be pulled back up for more people to come down. Allie saw that her little sister was not on the first round of people to be put on winches on the winch to come down. So she decides to grab an AR, and she grabs onto the winch as it's being pulled back up to go on the bridge. The leader of her group and Sam see this. They start yelling at her to be like, no, what are you doing? Like, get down. But it's too late. She's already getting towards the top. She gets on the top. She starts firing her weapon at some of the ferals. Her sister is right there, kind of being like, what the hell? And she quickly ties her sister on there, and then other women tie themselves to the other winches as well. And she pushes her off the bridge, and she's like, go. And because she's doing that, she's fighting again more with the AR, and she's like, I'm running out of rounds. And when they come back down, Sam's like, where's your sister? Where's Allie? And she's like, she's up on the bridge. Like, she tied me up, and then she's up there. So him and the leader ride the winches back up after grabbing more ARs, and each grabbed an AR with some ammo, and they both head up. And while they're heading up, Allie is just like, it's okay, it's fine. I saved Sam and I saved my sister. I'm okay to die here. And the leader's partner is also with her up there fighting, because the leader's partner is like, I'll be the last one off the bridge. I need to make sure everybody else gets off first. As she's up there, they both run out of ammo. The leader's partner pulls out a machete and starts like stabbing at Ferals, but they overrun her and kill her. And Allie is just like, well, I went down fighting. And that's when the leader and Sam are pulled up on the winch and they start firing, and that saves Allie. And Allie's like, what are you doing? You need to be on the boat so you can save humanity. You are the future. And he tells her to shut up. He ties her to the winch without her realizing it, because she's going in for a hug, like, you saved me. We're gonna die together now. In this weird way. Like, she doesn't notice it. And then fully just pushes her off the bridge. And so he pushes her off the bridge. They start shooting at all the Ferals coming close, and the winch is going down. The leader's distraught, and she's just trying to kill as many of them as they can. Sam and the leader like end up fighting back to back while going in the circle and shooting. And then when Sam notices the winch should be as far as it can go, the Ferals are starting to get towards the rope to go down on it. He pulls out a machete. He just like cuts the rope, and that makes Allie fall the rest of the way onto the boat. And when she falls and goes, the person driving the boat just continues to drive. She just goes. And Allie is screaming. She's like, no, Sam's up there. We have to go back. We have to save Sam. And everybody's telling her, like, there's no going back. This is it. That's it. They can't go back. If they go back, they're all gonna die. And Allie's just distraught, and she's just really upset. And she starts crying, and then we do another time skip, time jump. So after all of that, the boat made its way down towards Florida, and they found a compound kind of on the coast that had an orchard attached to it, and that's a place they used to set up their new base. When they get to the area to set up their base, a team leaves the area to scout around, and they find a medical center, and they grab an ultrasound machine from the medical center. Because at some point, I can't remember when, Allie and Sam had sex. So obviously she's pregnant now. And they're using the ultrasound to track her progress, even though there's nobody really qualified to use the ultrasound. There's one person there that volunteered as a candy striper at a hospital, and now she's the medical expert of this team, this camp. And they also, all the women that survived that were essayed by Big Red are also checked, and most of them are like, okay. Not most of them, like a good percentage of them realize that they're pregnant too, and then they see the ultrasound and they're like, I don't want to go through with this. So they decide to terminate those pregnancies, except for one of the women who finds out through the ultrasound that she's having a girl. So she's like, obviously a girl, feral can't be a girl, so this baby should be fine. And she's like, I'm gonna go to term with this baby. And Allie realizes through the ultrasound that she's having a boy. So everybody's like, yay, she's having a boy, save humanity stuff. And she decides to name this boy Sam. And at this camp, because Allie is super pregnant, her little sister started taking over the training of the girls on survival tactics and shooting. And she's becoming as aggressive with them as Allie was to her, to get better at survival tactics. So Allie is super proud, and then it just kind of fades to black, the end. That was what happened in Feral. So reading the synopsis, I was really into it. I like post-apocalyptic like movies and books. It wasn't said like a zombie thing, but it really did remind me of Resident Evil. It was like, okay, this weird virus breaks out. I'm like, that could be interesting. I could really like that. But the further the book went on, the more I just kept rolling my eyes at it. And the dialogue between Sam and Allie was very cringeworthy. It was cringeworthy at the time and very forgettable after it. Obviously, I didn't keep any quotes in this video from it because I can't remember it, but it's like the most cliche things that could ever be cliche about two people meeting and instantly falling in love, but in a post-apocalyptic setting. But it was trying to be like a Hallmark rom-com with the dialogue, and I just excuse me, I wasn't here for it. And we found out through the story that the doctor at Allie's camp, she was the lead scientist that worked at that secret lab, and that the virus initially infected her husband before the explosion started at the secret lab, and she had to kill him. And she also had to kill her son, who was also infected in that same town, and she had to just go through and clear out her whole family. And there were several women in this camp that had similar stories of having to do some horrible things to stay alive. And all of these little tidbits of the stories, which are never explained, we don't ever follow any of their stories, that makes Allie just bug me so much more. Like, yes, she had to kill her dad, but he was also not recognizable as her father. He was like fully zombified, feral at that point. And like, I understand that can be traumatizing, but there were also way more traumatizing stories within this book, and those stories weren't ever given any time in this book at all. It just all focused on Allie, and Allie's trauma turned her into such a bitch to everybody else. Like, there were veterans in her camp that served active duty overseas and were deployed and saw a lot of trauma there. And Allie was picking on them and making fun of them because when they had a minute, they would either form a relationship with another woman, or they found like alcohol around from their scouts, and they would have a few drinks and like dance or sing or something in like these really, really far off calm points, and she was just making fun of them. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Like, I understand what you went through, but you are being so extreme for no reason. And it was just, that was very frustrating. And as soon as she saw Sam, it was very insta-lovey. It was very like, she was fine seeing Sam as a woman and being like, all right, this woman can teach me stuff about survival, and that's great. But as soon as she learned that Sam was a man, she was just like, oh, look at his hair. Look at his pretty eyes. I don't want to share him with anybody. And it was just, I get it, it's the end of the world. I understand the situations that they're in, but that was stupid. It was really stupid, and I did not like it. And again, end of the world, I understand things, people make mistakes and there's stupid decisions that happen, but she made so many stupid mistakes once she found out about Sam. Sam was just trying to tell her she needs to leave if the camp won't do it, or they need to run off together. And she's like, no, I love my sister so much that I can't leave her. Except we didn't see that love between her and her sister. We didn't see anything really positive between her and her sister until the very end of the book, where her sister's becoming like her. And then that's when Allie's like, oh, I approve. Other than that, there was no sisterly bonding from it. Her sister barely had anything to do with the story. Like, in the story, I don't even remember her name. She was mentioned so little. But Allie acted like a martyr to her sister, and it was like, look at everything I've done for you. Look at everything I am doing for you. So you better learn how to shoot better so I don't ever have to save you again. And I was like, that's really odd. It was really odd. Allie annoyed me so much throughout this whole book, and it it made me really not like finishing the book. Like at the end, I was hoping that the Ferrells would just kill Allie and Sam. Like I was hoping that some of the other characters would be able to get away, but I was like, at this point, just take Allie. I can't just take her. Just take her. But if you look at it like a action horror B movie, it makes sense. It kind of reminds me of like House of the Dead. Like, don't look for thoughtful dialogue or story and just pay attention to the action sequences and fast zombies. And that's kind of what it reminded me of at the end. And I think there were some very good ideas in the book, but they weren't followed up on. There were opportunities for some very thoughtful, like, plot to happen, some very in-depth stories about the trauma that happened, about these different stories that these women went through that brought them to this one camp. Like, there was a lot, and none of that was expounded on. It was just, we were just left with Allie and Sam, and Sam didn't even make it to the end because Allie decided not to listen to anyone and go up on the bridge. There was no reason for her to go up on the bridge. She went up on the bridge because her sister wasn't the very first one down on the wench, and she only wasn't the first one down because she was sending the younger children first, and she was going to be next. But Allie decided, my sister's not first, so I'm gonna go up and sacrifice my life for my sister and for Sam. And then Sam went up to go save Allie and ended up dying for it. Like, there's no point to that. There's no point to that. But Allie's all nice, happy, and pregnant in Florida at the end of the book, so I guess there's that. And when I originally wrote the notes for this book and looked at the rating, I think I was feeling very generous, because in my reading journal, I rated it a 3 out of 5. But re-looking through, like, writing this script for this and going through my notes on the book, I was like, wow, that is super generous, and I do not feel like this book deserves a 3 out of 5. So I had to update that and re-put it through the Call-Pile system, and it was a 1.7 out of 5, which I rounded up to 2, so you're welcome. And the more I think about it, the more I just get unreasonably annoyed with Allie and Sam and some of these characters that I want to bring it down more, but I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna leave it right there. And it just made me feel like the writers really didn't know any women, especially like young women. And this is just kind of what we were left with, and it was not an enjoyable time. But hey, if you're wanting to read it, I suggest the audiobook. The audiobook isn't very long, and you can get it kind of, the action sequences, get from one action sequence to the next a little bit quicker. If I had to sit there and read this book would have probably taken me months to read, if at all. I don't think I would have finished it. I think my eyes would have rolled in back of my head so much that I would have been like, no, it's not worth it. But that was Feral. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope you guys all have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is, where you are. Don't forget to do all the things, like, rate, subscribe, follow, all of the stuff, etc., etc. If you guys want to hang out with me more outside of the videos or video gaming or anything, all my social links are in the description below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.